He didn't get out right away. The garage door closed slowly behind him. He waited in the dark. He stepped out of the car. To enter his home, he had to pass through 2 reinforced doors. One led from the garage into the building, the other from the hallway into the living room. Itamar's little shoes and Noah's old rubber flip-flops lay by the entrance. The house was quiet. A dim light shone from the kitchen. Haggai tried to read the silence for signs of wakefulness. He passed Itamar's room. The door was wide open. Itamar sat with headphones on, hunched forward, PlayStation controller in hand. "Good evening," Haggai said with a smile. He stepped in and stood beside his son. Itamar turned his head slightly, almost imperceptibly. Despite the headphones, despite the action, he sensed his father's presence. On the screen, an armed figure crawled through rubble. Green reticle lines hovered over painted enemies. Silent gunfire, a perfect simulation of battle. Reality had long ago stopped looking more real than this. He doesn't realize who's in control. I'll finish the story for him soon, he muttered. Of course you will. Haggai stroked his son's head and walked away. Noah's door was closed, but light spilled from the crack. She was still awake. What was going on in this house so early in the morning? He knocked gently. Yes, Dad. She lay on her bed and removed her headphones. It's a quiet section, so I heard the knock. You don't need to apologize for letting me in. What are you listening to? Guess. She held the headphones in her hands. He leaned closer. The signal was faint. Then he heard the harpsichord. Scarborough Fair. Beautiful, Dad. Noah, I know tomorrow is a day off, but still, isn't it a bit late? She smiled and placed the headphones back on. The conversation was over. It was the longest exchange he had with her in weeks. When exactly had he lost them? Everything had moved too fast. Time had sped up. He used to think routine made the days fly by. But even now, when storms and chaos pulled life, time still rushed forward without breaks. At the end of the hallway, where the light barely reached, stood an old wooden shelf. On it sat some of Itamar's Lego sets. A gentle wave of sorrow rose in him. Just yesterday, they had been the boy's world. And his. At the front stood a massive white dragon, built from hundreds of tiny pieces. Its mouth still gaped open, tail raised high. When had that been? 4 years ago? Maybe 5. Tonight, the dragon looked like a skeleton on the verge of collapse. Discarded. A relic. The only terror it stirred was the thought of counting backward, trying to predict the moment when Itamar's patience and tenderness for him would finally run out, and he too would be thrown in the trash. The bond with the children had once been his center. Now it was fading. Especially with Noah. Sometimes, on quiet Saturday mornings, he heard her speaking softly with Nurit, her voice lowered in that unmistakable tone of sharing something meant for them alone. The moment he entered the kitchen, the conversation stopped. That silence hurt more than any scream. You know, he had once said to Noah, I know how to keep a secret too. He had smiled at her, genuine, almost shy. She never asked what he did or where he worked, but she wasn't naive. She knew what wasn't said. He had told no one at home that he belonged not only to the top secret circle, but to a group of 12 whose classification was too high to appear in any file. 3 days later, maybe so as not to hurt his feelings, she shared with him a message from a close friend. He listened, grateful, and said, I'm sure it's temporary. You'll be friends again. He ruined it. Her smile vanished. Dad, you don't understand. I want nothing to do with her. It's over. Nurit was asleep. Haggai didn't turn on the light. He undressed, changed into a swimsuit, and stepped out to the pool. He turned on the soft blue interior lights, leaving the surroundings in darkness. He stood at the edge of the water, watching it for a long moment. These were his favorite minutes of the day. He rinsed off with lukewarm water so the plunge wouldn't be too sharp. Then he dove in. The first touch was cool, but the water gave way. It wrapped around him, and within seconds, it held him, as if it had never been cold. He began with a slow breaststroke, then shifted to a stronger crawl. The pool lights blurred with the ripples, as if they too had lost their grip on shape and time.